Hey friends, my name's Georgie. The warmest of welcomes to the Just Breathe podcast, where I'll be talking all things breathing to help empower you guys to use the power of your breath to harness your bodies and minds. In today's episode, I'll be nattering away to Keli Carpenter. Now, Keli is quite the extraordinary woman. Having been introduced to transcendent meditation at the age of 6, Keli is now a conscious breathwork facilitator, Chopra certified transcendent meditation teacher, forgiveness coach, founder of the Other Side of Average Therapy for the Soul, and creator of the 10 Steps to Finding Freedom Through Forgiveness. Keli's list of skills is absolutely endless, and I had the most incredibly powerful conversation with her, all about her personal journey with breath, as well as why she thinks meditation could make the world a better place. If you haven't already, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Just Breathe podcast. The more people talking about breathing, the better. Let's keep building that strong breathing community. All right, let's crack right on with this conversation. It is a juicy one, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. This is episode 16 of Just Breathe with Keli Carpenter. Hey Keli, welcome to the Just Breathe podcast. So good to have you on. How are you doing?
Oh, thanks. It's wonderful to be here. I'm wonderful. Thanks.
Good,
Yeah.
awesome. So I'd really love to just dive right in there if that's okay. You have a fascinating journey, and I really want to know at 6 years old, going into a transcendent meditation, being introduced to something so powerful at such a young age. I suppose you're like a sponge when you're 6. I'm so curious how that affected you. That's crazy.
Mhm.
Not many 6-year-olds have that experience.
Yeah. And I have to kind of preface it with, it's not like my mom was some guru. And
Right.
that's what, brought me to meditating at 6, doing
Hmm.
TM. It was actually because my mom was kind of struggling. She
Right.
was struggling internally. She was going through a messy, manipulative divorce, and she knew
Right.
she needed something to help bring her back home to,
Right.
to support her through what she was going through.
Yeah.
And she just brought me along to
Yeah.
learn as well. And like, you know many things in our life, we don't actually realize the impact it has on us until much later.
Of
At
course.
6, I wasn't asking big life questions, like, or
No.
had work related stress or anything. I just meditated because I was told to meditate.
Yeah.
And it really wasn't until later in my life that I realized the impact that it had. And it was probably even after, there was things that I noticed in my life,
Yeah.
you know, ways of approaching life,
Of
thoughts that I
course.
used to think that I really
Yeah.
didn't think were not normal.
Hmm.
um, it wasn't until later that in that reflecting, and one of the things that I really reflected on was this ability to understand that what was happening around me, and if it was causing suffering in me, that it wasn't so much what happened, even though that has its challenges as well, but it was actually my reliving it, my inability to integrate it, my
Mm.
my holding it on the inside. And as a teenager, I remember myself saying, I can only hear myself think for so long, and I need to make a change.
Yeah.
And it was not realizing, I mean, the victim narrative is so big in life, and it's not that
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
100% free from it, but I had this ability even as a teenager to witness. So even though I felt affected and somehow victimized by the outside, I also had this
Yeah.
awareness that it really wasn't that was
Yeah.
causing my strife or my suffering. It was my
Gosh.
inability to make a new meaning, my inability
Yeah.
to integrate it.
Yeah, gosh. And as a teenager, I mean, you know, anyone above the age of 18 has been there, that there's
Yeah.
some crazy thoughts going on in your
Hmm.
mind there. You're sort of opening your eyes to a world that you never knew it existed. And so to actually be aware of that narrative, a lot of people don't get to that till they're sort of in their 20s, especially in the Western world. So that must
Yeah.
have been a lot of inner monkey chit chat that you were
Yes.
experiencing.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow.
And at 19, I actually went to my first counseling appointment on my own accord
Right?
because I had this awareness, but I still didn't
Yeah.
have the tools of, how do I really reframe my story? How do I really,
Yes.
let go and to heal some of these, traumas that happened in my life?
Yeah.
And I went in, and like most of us, if we go to see somebody, we're going to tell our story.
Yeah.
That's the first part of our healing process, is to tell our story.
Of course.
And I was really actually quite surprised that, and taken back by, she saw me as my story. She
Right.
didn't have the ability to even help me in the way that I was seeking, because it was
Yeah.
more of reinforcing my story.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this isn't what I expected. And I went back for another appointment, and the same experience happened. And that really set me on a path of, what does it really mean to integrate our stories, to have life be our teacher, and to
Yeah.
live in that way.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I love that, like owning your story for exactly what it is. It's interesting with social media these days and advertising, the media in general. It's so interesting to think about our story, but how our story is influenced by all the stories, even you think Instagram stories, right? That you're
Yeah.
surrounded by. Every couple of seconds, you're looking at a news story. And
Hmm.
I wonder if that can actually taint your view of how you own your own story of is my story even good enough, or is
Yeah.
it big enough maybe today, you know?
Hmm. I mean,
Oh,
there's such a facade, such an illusion
right.
out there when you get into social media. And I think, kind of even pointing back, I mean, I was a teenager a long time ago, but I also have teenagers.
Yeah.
Well, actually, my oldest is 21. And so they've
Right.
also been raised with these tools.
Hmm.
And I'm seeing the profound effect in them as they go through these years. And it's just heartwarming to know that that kids can be supported in that way, when you look at a world where, so much of the challenge is that influence of this false illusion of how people are on social media,
Of how people tell their
how we
stories
need to
in a
be.
way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And and I don't compare, and
Hmm.
I don't maybe live up to this, or I'm not experiencing that.
Yeah.
um and in Canada, which is where I'm at, the
Hmm.
second cause of death in kids, youth, teens, non-adults, is suicide.
Wow.
And it's heartbreaking because it doesn't need to be that way.
No.
We aren't the worst thing we've ever done, and we
No.
aren't whatever happened to us.
No.
So, how do we really find, who am I really? And to return to that inner sense of resilience, that inner strength, that really knowing who we are and trusting that, so that as we move, and the skills to move through
Mm.
life, and receive life as our teacher,
Yeah.
instead of being a victim of it.
Yeah. And I mean, to find that inner resilience, you've got to go looking, right? So,
Mhm.
I mean, social media as a positive is at least a tool for spreading
Yes.
awareness of these tools of meditation. Could you explain a little bit about what transcendent meditation actually is? For I know roughly, but I'm sure a lot of people listening sort of hear it and nod along, but don't quite actually know what we're on about. So,
Yeah. Well, I break meditation down into three categories,
right,
and that is observant,
hmm,
focused, and transcendent.
Right.
So observant meditation practices are where you're observing without manipulation. You're
Okay.
observing what is. So that's where
Yeah.
mindfulness practices can fall in, or just breath awareness. There's,
Hmm.
several, practices that fall into that category. And
Yeah.
focused is where we are focused on one thing. So that could be candle meditation, it could be audio meditation,
Right.
it could be really specific breath patterns where we have a
Hmm.
focus on our breath in breathing in a certain way.
Yeah.
And then in transcendent, that is where we use the use of a mantra. It's a Sanskrit word. It doesn't have meaning. It's used for its vibrational qualities. And ultimately, it's actually used for a tool for the mind.
Right.
We have in Western culture have given so much emphasis to our cognitive understanding, our intelligence, what we know up here,
Oh God, yeah, we go to
how
school for
often,
years, right?
yeah. And I mean, from the time, kids are little, it's
Yeah.
ABCs. What does a cow say?
One, two, three. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And how often do we actually teach our kids to listen to the messages that their body has,
Mm.
to to trust their intuition, to tap in, to decipher the two voices that actually go on in all of us. It's not
Yeah.
often that we do that. So, the mantra being a tool for the mind,
Yeah.
it's like it, changes the way the thinking process usually happens. Because
Right.
usually we think a thought, we associate a meaning to it, and that, gets linked to that and that and that. And pretty soon our mind is off running.
Right. And that affects
So
the body too, right? The
yes,
nervous system, everything. It's all linked, right? It's
yes, it is.
crazy. Right,
Yes.
right, right.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And so, as we think this thought, essentially,
Mm-hmm.
is what a mantra is,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have meaning, and it's used for its vibrational qualities. It's
Right.
actually linked to your date, place in the transcendent meditation that I teach.
Yeah.
Date, place, and time of your birth. So it's very, it's about like your expression,
Yeah.
the truest expression of you before the conditioning all happened in the world.
Yes.
That's kind of the vibration of it.
Yeah.
And so, we give the mind something to do so that eventually we slip beyond the thinking process, because it can't associate it. It can't run wild,
Right.
down this thought, down this, path. So it's a tool to help us slip beyond the thinking process into stillness, into that, I am, beyond our physical experience, beyond our stories,
Right. Right.
tapping into that resilience. And so with observant and focused, we start with the practice and we end with the practice. So we start focused, let's say, on a candle, we
Mm.
end focused on a candle. With
Right.
transcendent, part of the name is we start with the practice, but we actually transcend the practice.
Right.
So
Right.
that in a nutshell is a little bit about the three categories of meditation, and
Yeah.
where, transcendent meditation, or some of the key elements of it, is really about connecting to that which is, you know, the I am, beyond our
Yeah.
physical experience.
Beyond your identification
Yes.
of who you
Yeah.
are, because
Mhm.
there's a brilliant program actually on Netflix called The Mind Explained, and something on there I watched yesterday actually was saying that our sense of self is actually just an accumulation of our past experiences and our future thoughts, our sort of mind wanderings of what we predict might happen, but which is also accumulated from what happened in the past. and
Yes.
and that was fascinating to me, especially with you talking sorry, about transcendence. So
Mhm.
that's a huge leap and a huge journey actually, to transcend
Mhm.
beyond years, for me 25 years of thinking and
Mhm.
conditioning and absorbing and experiencing into something beyond. That must have some enormous sort of awakenings and realization as a result of those transcendent meditations. Do you find that with a lot of
Absolutely.
people?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's, we don't really meditate for the experience in meditation. We actually meditate for the other, excuse me, 23 hours of our day,
Yeah.
where we're, if we're connecting, let's say, let's just call it the I am,
Yeah.
to our beingness is actually what I call it mostly, our
Mm-hmm.
beingness, because we're human beings. So we
Yes.
live in the world of humanity with all the conditioning, the attachments, the stories,
Yeah.
and our beingness. And this can look right from, the shadowy kind of experiences to the blissful kind of experiences. It's still all the human experience. And then
Yeah.
our beingness is that we actually meditate for the experience in the other 23 hours of our day. But
Right.
in meditation, when we drop in and we transcend and we really connect to our beingness or the I am, then we actually bring more of that out into our other 23 hours of our day. So we
Yeah.
are more aligned with, let's say, our soul's calling. Just, we naturally want to, this part of us naturally wants to love and let go and forgive and grow and connect and join. And in the, humanness part of
Mm-hmm.
us, we won't, there's a lot of judgments and
Yeah.
grievances and blaming and projections and
all,
numbing and
all to try and keep
dissociations.
ourselves safe, right? As a
Yeah.
form of sort of protection, as such. So,
Yes.
I mean, it's there for
And
a reason, but yeah,
yeah,
that
but we can really
transcending.
get stuck in it
Yeah,
because
right.
the truest, what we're seeking is only found within. Nothing outside is
Yes.
actually going to fill that void.
Yeah.
And so the truest sense of safety and security in the world is connecting to that inner resilience, to our
Wow.
beingness.
That is so powerful. My goodness. I
Yeah.
mean, and how much could this, especially Western world,
Mhm.
do with more influence of that idea that actually those answers that you are seeking from sex, from alcohol,
Mhm.
from junk food, from social media, again, from gossiping, all these, toxic things that there's so much of in this day and age.
Absolutely.
That actually freedom from that lies within you and is there the
Mhm.
whole time. But I suppose a lot of people will hear me say that, and there'll be a lot of sighs in the room, sort of going, well, yeah, but how do I let go and really find it? And do you think that we're all quite attached to this instant gratification today?
Oh,
So like
absolutely. That
quick
quick fix.
results. Hmm. 1 hour of
Absolutely.
meditation and I'm transcended, right? Yeah, I pay
Yeah.
you $20 and then I'm transcended. Is that good? Like a Big
Yeah.
Mac? It's like, no, dude.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's actually why in my meditation course, I bring in what I call our conscious practices, and it's the three essential tools that we really need.
Mhm.
And one of the reasons is because of that quick fix that people are seeking. So, one of the other tools that I really teach is how to unravel our emotional overwhelms from the standpoint
Wow.
of finding purpose and meaning in it,
Mhm.
because ultimately all we need to do is connect deep within and become aligned with that intuitive, this knowledge and wisdom that we have, which is beyond our years.
Yeah.
In an ultimate sense, that's all we need.
Right.
But we're so lost as a
Yes.
culture that we have this need to understand and to figure it out and
To
ahas and
intellectualize.
yeah.
Yes.
And
Right.
so to bring a certain level of what I call like somatic inquiry into it, of the tools
Mm.
of how to unravel the purpose of certain events, what this trigger, this overwhelm really is for me and what I really need underneath it um, to be able to decipher again the circumstances in our life and what they really are for us. It's really great on social media, back to that topic, to
Yeah.
post life happens, for you, not to you, but how
Yeah.
many actually live into that? How many
Right.
actually can live into their life, even something as big as COVID?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter how much we meditate and how connected we are inside, life still happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can't control some of the larger events that happen, but we can learn how to receive them and what they are for us so that they become a stepping stone to something, more, so that we can integrate. the meaning in it, so we can evolve consciously instead of unconsciously as that victim, because every one of us have the opportunity to use 2020 and be victimized by it, and we have the opportunity to have that be that portal for a new level of awakening. So how do we
Wow.
take experiences in our life and inquire into them to make new meaning of them, similar to our past and our traumas,
Yeah.
of what was that really for me? And that's even from the gravest of things. I mean, I've worked with people that have been locked in closets as children, that have
Wow.
been raped in
Yeah.
group experience of that. And there's everything we can reframe,
Yeah.
everything we can integrate to a point that we become free from it.
Right.
Not that it didn't happen, it happened
No.
for certain. We can't even bypass, like, the whole term, oh, you're gonna lick my wounds. Actually, we need to give the victimized place a voice.
Yeah.
We just don't want to live there,
No.
because that is what's going to stop our conscious evolution, our growth to becoming the best us that we're here to be.
Yeah. So what you're literally saying is using your adversity and turning it into your superpower or your strength.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Wow, that is incredibly powerful, because there is so much in this world that could name someone as a victim. And at COVID, you're right, especially, is everyone could claim they've had something taken away from them,
Yes.
um, on whatever level, whether that's the extremity of a loved one. And of course, my heart goes out to anyone who may have lost a loved one through this, and it could be as small as my holiday was cancelled.
Yeah.
But it is interesting, especially going back to that word transcendence, of transcending even that resentment, um,
Yeah.
as you describe it, and letting go. It's almost like that grudge that you could hold for 10 years, but it takes more energy to actually hold the grudge than to simply let it go. It's almost like the victim uses more energy by holding the grudge, than the sort of doer. COVID, COVID isn't going, oh, I'm so upset that Georgie is mad at me. It takes the energy away from me, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, it
absolutely.
makes so much
And
sense.
and this year has been a perfect example. And even I've maneuvered this line between
Yeah,
feeling disempowered and empowered.
yeah,
And it's a
yeah,
choice. It's based on the tools that we have and the practices that we're implementing, and our
yeah,
ability to see, to, actually take in, to witness, and to, understand what this is for us so that we
yeah,
can adjust and integrate.
yeah,
And it's amazing the little shift of how this can be empowering versus disempowering,
yeah.
and the fine
Wow.
line, the tools that are
Yes.
needed.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and myself included, I think a lot of people during this pandemic, this pause of sort of life as we know it, have found themselves asking the question, who am I? That when
Hmm.
my normal has shifted, who am I? Because I know
Yeah.
you work a lot with finding your truest expression. It's one of your key three elements, right, of your
Hmm.
teachings,
Yes.
your truest expression. And that's a big question. Who am
Yeah.
I? And
Mm.
again, I suppose the answer, I suppose, is within yourself, but that's quite a journey to set out on, right? The
Hmm.
who am I? Gosh.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, sometimes I'll say, it's okay to go from one hamster wheel to another.
Yeah.
Still in more alignment. This whole
Yeah.
idea of perfection is the
Of
lowest
finding
standard.
it, do you mean?
Yeah,
Of like,
yeah, and of
oh,
really knowing that it's a journey, it's a
yeah,
process. um, but it's being able to have the skills to redefine what's defining you, because what might be defining you now, you work through that. Okay, now I'm
yeah,
more aligned with myself, and then, oh, I find I'm really defined by this now, and working through that. So it's a process of unraveling that.
yeah,
And again, that little bit points back to that quick fix, or,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
instant
yeah.
gratification, that when we can do this kind of work, we really drop into the journey, the
Hmm.
conscious evolution
Yeah.
of our life, and really enjoying that instead of feeling like we need to be somewhere. And then once I get this,
Yeah.
it's all going to be better. Once I'm enlightened, or
Transactional.
have this much in my bank account, or,
Hmm.
this relationship, that we
Yeah.
can actually learn from it all. And it's really about our, conscious evolution. To
Absolutely.
really,
And even the way all of us, and we all do it, say the word journey, we put a positive expression on top of it. Whereas I heard a brilliant phrase which really stuck with me, that was, you have to have a breakdown to have a breakthrough, in that you
yes.
have to fall over to be able to get back up again. And it's something
Mhm.
I've certainly experienced since really stepping into my journey, to going on those baby steps to even discover an inch of my truest self. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's the most powerful journey, but it's not always enjoyable. And I
Yeah.
think people mistake meditation and these really spiritual, or depending if you relate to spirituality or not, but these sort of deep connected journeys, that they're not
Mhm.
always comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a story that I often tell, and it's actually about going through some of my training. And there
Right.
was a lot of really deep literature that we had to read, a lot of, you know, um, non-duality, and the Bhagavad Gita and Upanishads, and,
Mm.
really incredible literature. And yet there was this message from one particular teacher that was, we're striving for what they call sattva. And there's Maya, which is illusion. And
Right.
within Maya, there's what they call three gunas. And there's three illusions that we live in. And one
Right.
from, quite dark, despair, anger, quite unconscious,
Yeah.
to one of more learning and, you
Mm.
know, discovery and openness and inquisitiveness, and
Yeah.
then into, compassion and
Yeah.
joy and love. And this whole time through this, year-long course, I was like, it just didn't sit with me. I couldn't understand why I could understand from, the human element of
Yeah.
why we would want compassion over anger. I mean,
Yeah.
that's obvious.
Of
But
course.
the point is, it's all an illusion. And on a spiritual path, we can find ourselves. So that which once served us can hinder us, and that which once hindered us actually can be our portal for awakening.
Right.
And so, we can get defined and trapped in love and compassion, and it's all love and compassion. And, oh, you're
Yeah.
angry, I'm not. And
I'm
we use,
positive. I'm just
yeah, and
positive, right?
exactly. And we can use that as a place to create deeper separation, where
Yes.
we can, that defines us. And then what happens if we actually feel angry about something?
Hmm.
Something happens in our life that we feel resentful of. It's really the understanding that it's all an illusion, every
Right.
bit of it. And what that then also means is it's all perfect,
Right.
from the darkest, deepest to the lightest and brightest. They all have a purpose. They're all there for a reason. And it's about our equal loving embrace of all of it,
Right.
that actually is where that's where we find that thriving. That's the bliss state.
Yeah. That sort of
Yeah.
freedom that you speak
That
of.
freedom. Yeah.
Yeah.
Empowerment. Yeah.
But also, if all of that's an illusion, then where's the truth as such? Because the word illusion to me, if you think of sort of like a magician, says, that what you're seeing is not quite what you believe it to be.
Absolutely.
Um, and so then where is the truth? Where's the real stuff?
It's just, well, it's, so let's say it's anger. We're triggered
Okay.
by
Okay.
anger, for example. We'll use an
Yeah.
example. is that, the illusion usually is wrapped in the narrative. Well, this anger is because
Right.
you did this,
Yes.
and now I want to project it onto
The
you.
story. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So,
Mm.
but the truth is, I just feel angry, and own it.
Ah, yes. Okay. It's
What is
clicked.
this for me?
Yes.
It's a gift.
Mm-hmm.
This victim place, the anger, the grievances, the judgments are actually all a gift, just as much as the latest and brightest. It's just
Mm-hmm.
that most people, are taught in society to only feel their feelings so much. Some are
Yes.
better than others.
Don't
If
be
you feel,
disruptive.
yeah, and there's something wrong if you're feeling too much of this. And so
Yeah.
we've suppressed our emotions to such a degree that we don't give space to them. And when we
Yeah.
give space to them, no matter where they are on the spectrum, they are, there is always a gift on the other side. So the
Wow.
shame, the pain, they aren't the gift, but our ability to feel what's there,
To give it space.
to
Yeah.
move through it,
Yeah.
obviously in a safe container, because some emotions
Uh-huh.
are bigger and need, you know many times we need support. We need
Yes.
to be held there, and
Agreed.
how to move through some of the deeper ones in a safe place. But there's always a gift.
Mm.
100% of the time, it's just not possible for there not to be.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And
whether that's like a reclaiming of our innocence, whether it's like stepping into our
mm,
voice, whether,
yeah.
no matter what it is, it's
Yeah.
always directing us and guiding
Mm-hmm.
us. Life supports us, actually. um, we just usually don't have the tools to work with life in that way. So we're usually
Yeah.
fighting against it.
Absolutely. And it sounds like we said before, that separation from identification of, rather than I am angry, like I am an angry person, to I am experiencing anger in this
Yes.
moment.
Yeah,
And there's a big difference between that, right? Of
absolutely.
There's a lot of language out there right now of like, yeah, I'm really anxious, or I'm very stressed, or I am tired, or whatever. And I
Mhm.
suppose, do you think if you tell yourself and you speak that narrative, that your body, your nervous system, your mind even reacts to that statement? If you state I am tired, then your
Mhm.
body will inhabit exhaustion.
Absolutely. I
Really?
100%
Wow.
agree. And
Mm.
I don't know if you've ever heard of Dr. Emoto.
I haven't. No,
He's
that's
the
one to put
one
on the
who,
list.
yeah, he's the
Oh.
one who took, and you might have heard of the concept of this, that took water droplets and froze them at, rapid speeds, and then took
Right.
photos of the crystals
Ah, yes. Okay. Okay.
and
I'm with
how
you.
that responds to positive, or with children, there's or anybody, it's fun to do,
Mhm.
is to take a jar of rice in water,
Yeah.
write a whole bunch of, sorry, two jars, equally the same, different
Yeah.
spots, one with really negative words of hatred and everything
Yes.
else on it, and one with positive words.
Mm.
They'll actually this the and speak that to them daily, speak love and attention to this one, and anger and
Yeah.
mean things to this one. This will go black significantly sooner. It'll discolor in a way that this jar won't, and they're exactly the same jar.
Wow.
So that really
Wow.
does have an impact, but not, again, so we look at the vibration of words, that has an impact. But if we're stuffing some of that because it's like, no, I'm just going to speak positive words and not look at
Yes.
this, it's still in there. It's still turning black. It still has an effect. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underneath the water. Unless we can turn towards
Yeah.
it, unless we can be with it, it's going to either implode or explode in some capacity.
Yeah.
So, just because we're aware of the vibrational, the effects of words,
Mm.
doesn't mean that we need to then disassociate from our anger or our judgments. There's still
Mm.
a gift there, and they're going to have that darkness effect
Mm-hmm.
on us, unless we can turn towards them and shift them,
Yeah.
move through them. So that which we fight fights back. That which we resist persists.
Yeah.
So it's really important, first, to, understand the vibrational quality, but to understand that no matter where they are, they have a gift. So how can we move through them? How can we meet them and receive from them so that they don't have that power over us?
Yeah. Yeah. Even if you have the umbrella up, it's still raining, right?
Yes, exactly.
And sometimes you got to get it a bit wet.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow.
And there's a
100%.
difference, there's a difference. We can use our anger or it can use us, right? So we can
Yeah.
be angry and project and use it to manipulate and blame and hurt. We've probably all had an experience at some point in our life, whether we were kids and it's like, I'm angry at the playground and I want to hit
Yeah.
you. There's an experience of being angry and using it to, hurt or manipulate, to project it out. And we can stand in our anger and own it to that degree, to what is this for me?
Yeah.
What is it waking up? What's the gift in it?
What can this teach
Very,
me?
it's
Right.
both anger,
Yeah.
right? It's both,
Yeah.
it's still an emotion of anger, but it's the tools that we have in our life, our ability to hold space for ourselves, which really comes from, again, that deep inner practice, that transcendent of connecting to the part of us that isn't defined
Yeah.
by the experience, and having some, inquiry tools, some, somatic processing, inquiry experiences to unravel what that is for us on
Yeah.
an understanding level. So it's
Yeah.
both, the experience and the understanding is really what creates that wisdom.
Right. I want to bring up forgiveness.
Yeah.
When I was, of course, reading your website in preparation for this, I read the word forgiveness coach. And I think this comes at a perfect point in the conversation of, acceptance. There has to be forgiveness there, right? How important do you think forgiveness is as a part of the journey?
I think it's essential, actually.
Right.
We can be, I've used that word, enslaved or empowered. We can be enslaved or empowered. And anytime that narrative is going on, we're disempowered, we're enslaved to that. So we forgive not because wrong maybe didn't happen
Yes.
to us from the human aspect, but because reliving that pain is causing more suffering, that we do an inner assessment that, it's kind of similar to back when I was a teenager. I was understanding that what was happening was real.
Yeah.
Experiences happened, but I had this awareness that my suffering, my internal suffering and carrying on with this, reliving this story was actually mine.
Yeah.
That, and it was disempowering. And
Yeah.
I wanted to be free from it.
Yeah.
And that's the true, and that's the trueness of forgiveness, to forgive to the degree that you are completely free
Right.
from that
Right.
story. And
And
it's
when
possible.
Yeah, and we're not just talking about the forgiveness of others, right? We're talking about
Yeah.
the forgiveness of self as well. That's one I think that is often quite forgotten about, that we really associate forgiveness with, I'm sorry, that's okay. But what about,
Mhm.
guilt is a powerful, powerful emotion, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, forgiveness of, I guess go back to that. I believe I already said it, but we are more than the worst thing we've ever done.
Yes.
And we aren't what happened to us.
Yeah.
And, so how do we find that again? It points back to that I am.
Yeah. Right.
It's a misconception that we, forgive to, if we're victimized, that we forgive to, that somehow it abolishes, the wrong that happened. And actually, when we forgive, we say, yeah, actually, whether that's by our own actions or somebody else, is that, yeah, sure, what happened maybe wasn't right or just.
Yeah.
And I'm more than that.
Yeah. And that's huge, because that counts
Mm-hmm.
for, I am more than my depression. I am more than my
Yes.
anxiety. I am more than fill in the blank,
Mm-hmm.
which is in this world, you know, what you said right at the beginning of the conversation about the amount of suicides in young people, which is just horrific. Just
Mm-hmm.
that idea and concept and belief that I am not my depression is so,
Mm-hmm.
it can save someone's life, right?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's, how essential do you think these practices are in the
Oh,
world
I personally think
today?
they're everything.
Yeah.
You know, somebody called me the other day, and her son is really struggling in school. I think he's 6 or 7.
Yeah.
It's a lot of anger issues.
Right.
You know, he's been through, or his parents went through, you know, didn't necessarily have a good relationship. His father's pretty angry
Right.
person, so they're split up, and you know, that's his male role model.
Right.
You know, raging, you know,
Yeah.
while he's driving, and you know, just so much. And the school, you know, called the mom and said, you know, we really need to deal with this. You know, at school, he's like kicking bags off somebody's chair, and you know,
Yeah.
all of these little things. And you know, that we need to do XYZ, and maybe even think about not having him in school. If we can't get a grip of this, you need to,
Ooh,
you know,
yeah.
go get some help. So she called the mental health. They can't get into an appointment for 4 to 6 months. So what could go
What?
on in four
Oh
to
my
six months?
goodness. Right.
And the other thing is I asked her, because all of the tools that she's been given and that she has, as I asked her outright, are you helping him manage his emotions or move through his emotions?
Right.
It's very different.
Mm-hmm.
The context of managing your emotions, again, for the 6 or 7-year-old, is anger is bad.
Yes. Bury
So
it.
you're bad for, and if you can't manage it, there's something wrong with you. You
Right.
can't come to school. You can't, you know, whatever it
You're
is.
cast out. Yeah.
Yeah, that 6 or 7-year-old child has got some things that he wants to express. That anger is something that's there for him. So, how do we actually, in that really safe way, allow ourselves to feel that? You know, the mom had put in a stationary bike, and every time he feels angry or frustrated, he gets on the bike to, you know, ride it out. And I said, well, you know, that's good in one sense. You know, he's
Mm-hmm.
on the bike like 7 or 8 times a day, you know, probably
Wow.
got some strong legs.
He's probably
But I
some
said,
triathlete by now.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I said, um, you know, but even like if we just took like the physical, you know, aspect of a bike, what
Mm,
about if it was a heavy bag
yeah.
and he was allowed to be angry at the
Yeah.
heavy bag
Kick
instead of
that
using
bag.
a bike to get rid of anger?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
we're trying to get rid of it, even though we don't understand it. We don't know. We're not looking at why it's there. We're not just, it's bad. You need to get rid of it.
Cycle it out.
Versus,
Yeah.
yeah, versus here's a heavy bag. Let all your anger out.
Yeah.
I can you just feel what that would feel like for that six
Yeah.
or 7-year-old? Like it's just
Relief.
like brings tears to my eyes to
It's
give them space
acceptance.
to
Yeah.
let that anger out, feel that anger
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
a safe
It's,
container.
yeah. And it is acceptance, for there is nothing wrong with you. Because I suppose
Mhm.
anger is learned. No one's
Mhm.
born angry. It
Yes.
is something that is like no one is born to lie or to criticize or to
Mhm.
judge. It's learned,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. And we
So
have to learn. There's not a lot of people that, you know how to hold their emotions,
right.
to inquire into them, to be able to unravel them.
Hmm.
There's a lot of people that have that safe space,
Yeah.
that permission.
100%. I think
Yeah.
we would live in a very different world with less conflict, um,
Mhm.
less crime, riots in general, less, harm. if
Mm-hmm.
if this was more mainstream than it already is. I mean, it's slowly dripping into the mainstream. People are slowly waking up to it, but
Yeah,
yeah, do you agree? I really think it could be a
absolutely.
totally different world.
Absolutely.
Mm.
You know, when you think, I mean, I might have the exact quote wrong, but the Dalai Lama said if we were to teach every 7-year-old to meditate,
Mhm.
we would end world chaos in one generation.
Wow. Yeah.
Because, you know, not only does, just like I said, on that ultimate sense, meditation just allows us to create a bigger, wider space that
Yeah.
we are connected to the I am, and we just witness these, you know, human experiences detached. So we witness them, can hold them, accept them, instead of being defined by them and stuck in them.
Yeah. Respect, support, and allow. 100%.
Yeah.
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 Wow. So
Hmm.
your coaching practice itself is called The Other Side of Average.
Yes.
And I would love for you to unpick that a little bit. Is there a story behind
Hmm.
that?
Yeah, there is actually. And it's The Other Side of Average, Therapy for the Soul. And,
Yes, is the
you
full
know,
name.
yeah, and therapy for the soul, well, obviously our soul doesn't need therapy, but, you know, but it's about that directing
Yeah.
back to making membership again. And The Other Side of Average really came from my own personal experience of
Mm.
feeling how average I was in, you know, my mom was married 3 times, all messy, manipulative sort of divorces. I had enough
Right.
trauma in my life. I had, you know, because of the trauma as a young child, I had difficulty reading. And then, you know, of course, in my era, I'm, you know, in my 50s. So in my era, it was really shameful. It was almost like wearing a
Oh,
dunce cap. And, you
oh
know, there's just
no.
so much that I experienced in my life that was so average as
Gotcha.
far as life
Yeah.
and
How we
conditioning and
associate that
dysfunction.
word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was this ability to face it that was the other side of average. You
Yes.
know, to be given this tool from my mom, who couldn't be the parent that she really wanted to be, but she knew enough. This part of her that just wanted more for me gave me meditation.
Yes.
And that's going to get me choked up. But
Oh.
my mom passed away a year ago,
Oh.
exactly, pretty much a year
She
ago.
sounded
So
like an incredible.
that's yeah, she really was.
Yeah.
And so, you know, so that's where that name came from, is like the other side of average, of how we face life and embracing our averageness. I mean, how many people want to run away from all of those things that just make us average? Again, that's social media, it's this status, it's all these things that define us, this projected idea. And, you know, when we realize our humanity, when we can sink into our humanity, you know, it's that's where that um, being not being defined by
Yeah,
it.
yeah, that's what I was just gonna say, that the thing that strikes an enormous chord with me with that name is that I think this world is very full of people who tell you who you are allowed to be. I mean, I come from the world of acting, so very much you are told who you
Mm.
are allowed to be and who you are allowed to play. Um, and so it goes further than that, though, in the world of academics, that if you're not from a certain social class, you know, you're not allowed to be a doctor. You know, if you have problems reading at school, maybe even at age 7, you probably won't be a lawyer because you won't be seen that way. Rah, rah, rah. And that name, The Other Side of Average, speaks to me because it's like, no, you never apologize for who you are. You can transcend into infinite potential if you allow
Mhm.
yourself to believe it's possible, right?
Absolutely.
And it's
Absolutely.
huge. It's
Yeah.
huge. If we all believed that we really had the power to do anything unapologetically, like,
Yeah.
you know, screw you world, I am going to do whatever I want to a degree.
Hmm. Yeah.
You know, that that's enormous. And I think,
Yeah.
again, we'd have a very different world of people that, you know, didn't sit in their shoebox. That was, well, you know, I'm from a impoverished home and, you know, a poor background. And so I'm probably going to work in a supermarket, for example, or something. Where it's like, no, you go start that business. Go. It's amazing.
Absolutely. And there's kind of two things that you mentioned I'd love to play off of. Is one is that unapologetic, the apology that you mentioned. And actually my Transcendent meditation course, which is Transcendent meditation and the somatic inquiry put together, is actually called Become Unapologetically You.
Amazing.
And when you talked about coming from an impoverished family and that really anything is possible, I've looked through, dissected, observed people who are influential, who live on purpose, who are successful, not just from the financial standpoint of success. And many of them have come through very difficult childhoods, and if we even just use Oprah Winfrey maybe as an example, what she grew up with, what she faced in the beginning part of her career, and where she is at today. And if you look through people that are these influencers in the world who live on purpose, they all have exactly two things in common. And that's what I teach in my course, is they connected to the essence of who they are, their beingness. So they have connected that deep within, and they've unraveled their story, because every one of them has had a story. And so they've integrated that story and, transcended it, connected to that which is beyond the story. And that's really essential.
I think such a common narrative, one with me, with even starting this podcast, was to do with telling your story unapologetically. That little monkey that pops in and goes, but will people listen? And I bet you £1 million or Canadian dollars that popped into Oprah Winfrey's head at some point on her journey, that, okay, will people listen? And my goodness, did they listen? But you've got to step out and speak and risk, being rejected to be listened to. And I think people dismiss how many people share very, very close similarities in their stories. They're like, well, no one will listen because no one will understand me, and I'm an outcast, or I'm this. And it's like, actually, I think millions of people would relate to many things we have even said in this episode, which is why storytelling is the most powerful tool in the world.
Absolutely. So congratulations to you for really stepping into that.
Well, no, congratulations for you for teaching a Be Unapologetically You course. I think that is the most needed thing. Especially, do you work with just adults on that course, or do you work with teenagers too?
I had teenagers as too. Well. Mostly it's for adults, but I have a soft spot for families. So when people join my course, so if there's partners, let's say, for example, one partner joins, and it's a really small fee for the other one, because ultimately I want families doing this together. And so even in the course, we go through an entire section, because I was a child of meditation, because I've raised my children with meditation, because I've taught parents to, bring meditation in as a family setting. I do go through an entire session on how to teach kids, the impact on kids, all the different stages, right? From, prenatal to having adult kids. And so, and the one thing that I can say is it's never too late. Quite often I'll tell a story of a client that said, oh, my daughter's a teenager, and I think I've just made all the mistakes. I've been dysfunctional. I just, is it too late? And I said to her, well, let me, answer you with a question. If your mom, who I know you have a difficult relationship with, all of a sudden became more present, became more, grounded, more patient, more responsive to life instead of reactive to life, how would that affect you as an adult?
Right.
So is it ever too late to 100%. Become more conscious? And so as much as it's usually individuals, there's an enormous component to the program in reference to families and relationships. So, raising conscious families and having conscious relationships is really, my passion. My soft spot in life.
Yeah, that's incredibly powerful. Okay, 2 final quick fire questions. Are you ready? Okay,
yes.
Number 1, if you were made president of the entire world, what's the first thing you would do?
Well, I'd have to say I would teach everyone to meditate.
Great! That's what I was hoping.
There'd be a universal, global meditation practice.
Nice. Like every day at a certain time, you'd say
Yes.
everyone meditates, like brushing your teeth.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Nice.
Yeah.
Maybe something a bit more sort of like with weight to it than brushing your teeth, but that's all that came to my mind in the moment. So here we are.
And the daily routine that we all find ourselves in, that is, is about ending separation and chaos and dysfunction. Trauma.
I think you'd be an excellent ruler, so I think you should definitely apply when the position becomes available. Number 2, where can people find you?
So my website is theothersideofaverage.com.
Cool. It'll be in the show notes.
Okay. And on Instagram or Facebook, it's at The Other Side of Average.
Cool.
And and on my website, you can find a link to book an inquiry session. So if you have some further questions, if you'd like to, how could you help me in my particular situation, you can book an inquiry session with me.
And you work worldwide, right? Because of course, especially now, because everything is probably mainly online. So that opens a door of opportunity. Incredible.
Actually, I have very little clients that live in my own country. So I work mostly, abroad.
Yeah. Cool. But from the comfort of your own home.
Yes,
as well.
Exactly. Yes.
But traveling, I must say, I'm very excited to travel again. So
yes, me too.
It's nice to have a balance of the two. Well, Keli, it's been a joy. Like my mind feels expanded massively from this one conversation. So I think anyone would be incredibly lucky to do your course, to work with you, to experience. We've only talked about your practices. We haven't even experienced them yet. And of course, I hope to experience them very soon. But thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you. Thank you for all that you do and bringing your unapologetic self out into the world.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.